She gave birth in the rain. I found Inca, a German Shepherd mama, shivering in a storm in New Orleans, shielding two newborn pups with her body. The sky split open and the grass went the color of bottle green. Water hammered the asphalt and turned the lot behind the supermarket into a shallow river. I'm Daniel, 46, and I've pulled more than one rescued puppy out of ugly weather, but this felt like a countdown. Both newborns were black and tan, tiny lungs high-copping, and their fur pasted flat, like wet leaves. One German Shepherd puppy pressed into her belly and squeaked. The other German Shepherd puppy barely moved, a little pup with a mouth that opened and closed like it was tasting the storm. Inca's ribs sawed under her skin, and she curled into them, a wall of shivering muscle. She snapped at the air when I stepped closer. That sound cut through the rain like metal. I spoke low and slow so my words wouldn't startle her. Her ears flicked, but her eyes locked on mine, red-shot and unblinking. Fresh mothers are fire and knives, and that's how it should be. This shepherd dog was a fortress around her babies, and I respected the gait. I slid half a hot dog across the slick concrete with 2 fingers. She lunged so fast the chain link rattled and my heart thudded in my throat. Her teeth flashed and the rescued puppy under her flinched. I froze and let the rain soak me until it felt like penance. The little pup pressed deeper under her chest, and I tried to steady my breathing. The lot smelled like wet cardboard and gasoline. Lightning stitched the clouds and the thunder shook the dumpster lids. I eased my jacket off and held it open like a roof without a wall. Inca snarled again, a low engine in her chest, but she didn't strike. The abandoned puppet wasn't moving, gave a thin, threadbare sound. That was the cord that pulled me forward an inch. I slid the jacket to the ground, making a dry island as best I could. I set a shallow bowl near the edge to catch warm rainwater and kept my palms open. Her hackles rose and she put her body between me and the young puppy like a door slamming shut. I remembered my mother teaching me to walk slow through kitchen glass after a storm window blew out. 1 step, wait, 1 breath, wait. I spoke her name the way you say a prayer you hope someone hears. Inca, you keep them. I'll keep the rain off. The storm beat on, and the German Shepherd puppy that could still squirm nosed into her fur, while the small dog with a fading cry went quiet again. I felt the clock in my chest and knew I had to give them warmth before the cold took the choice away. I edged the jacket closer until the edge kissed her paw and didn't move it another inch. She looked at the jacket, then at me, then down at her babies. Her lip curled, but the snarl thinned into a growl made of gravel and exhaustion. The loyal puppy shivered like a leaf, and the young shepherd's belly fluttered against the mud. I shifted my weight and let the rain choose me instead of them. When the wind lifted the jacket, I pinned it with my knee and made a tent with my back. Water drummed my shoulders and I felt every pound of the sky. Inca smelled my sleeve, then snapped at the air again, a warning I earned and accepted. I kept my hands where she could see them, and waited for her to decide if I was weather or threat. Her breath warmed the nearest pup, fogging the air between us. The furry pup's tiny ribs fluttered like moth wings. The growing puppy with the thin voice didn't answer back. My mouth tasted like rain and fear, and I told myself to move only when the moment opened. The moment opened when Inca shifted to nose, the silent one. I slid 2 fingers under the jacket and tucked its edge over both pups without touching fur. Heat gathered in that pocket like a kept promise, and the storm around us felt a fraction farther away. Inca's eyes never left mine, and I held them steady until she blinked first. That blink was the smallest door, and I stepped through it, knowing the night would test every inch of me next. Rain drummed harder, bouncing off the dumpster lids and making every sound jagged. Inca pressed her jaw tight and bared her teeth when I shifted my weight. The German Shepherd mama had just given life in the storm, and she would rather rip through me than surrender an inch of her ground. Both German Shepherd puppies whimpered under her chest, one more alive than the other. The little pup, with some fight, wriggled weakly toward her belly. The other lay limp, tiny sides barely moving. Her body was a shield of mud and fur, trembling but unbroken. I felt the truth in my bones. No one was getting close to these newborns unless she chose to let them. I kept my palms flat, letting the rain soak me instead of them. The jacket flapped against the current, a thin flag of surrender. The smell of wet wool and wet dog fused in the air, sharp and human all at once. I remembered every story of a loyal puppy who fought for her litter, and every scar rescues had left on my hands before. This wasn't a rescue yet. This was a negotiation with a mother who believed the whole world wanted her children gone. Her growl vibrated through the concrete, and thunder doubled it into a warning that rattled the shopping carts in the corner. I slid another strip of food forward slower than a clock hand. The shepherd dog snapped it from the ground without breaking eye contact. Her jaw worked once, twice, then she pushed the morsel toward the furry pup who was still squirming. That single act cracked something open in me. She wasn't eating for herself. Even drenched, shivering, and starving, her choice was her baby's first. The abandoned puppy with the faint breath gave a short cough, no louder than the patter of drops. It was the sound of a candle struggling to stay lit in a hurricane. I spoke softer, not words, but tones, the way you sue a crying child before they know language. Her ears twitched. The growl stayed, but it lowered a notch. Not gone, but less sharp. The little companion wriggled, tiny paws searching for warmth, and Inca tucked him tighter into her belly. The second one, the fading one, sagged against her leg. I inched my knee forward, anchoring the jacket wider to shield the corner. Rain struck my back, sharp as nails, but the pups lay beneath a patch of fabric that was finally dry. Her chest heaved, nostrils wide, every nerve screaming for her to fight. But she didn't lunge this time. She let her head lower, resting her chin against the trembling flank of the weaker pup. Her eyes never blinked, locked into mine as if to say, "You can watch, but you don't touch." I swallowed hard because she was right. For now, trust would be counted in inches, in breaths, in the thin line between life and loss. And I felt the storm wasn't our enemy anymore. It was the clock running against us, beating faster than the hearts of those newborns tucked under her chest. Thunder rolled over the roofs and the storm pressed heavier. But my eyes stayed on the two newborns under her chest. One German shepherd puppy twitched its legs and tried to crawl closer, searching for milk. The other German shepherd puppy stayed frighteningly still, chest rising shallow, body slack like rainwater had already claimed it. I felt the breath catch in my throat. These weren't just puppies. They were hours-old lives clinging to the thinnest thread, and their mother was the only anchor keeping them from being swept away. Inca snapped when I leaned forward, her teeth flashing white in the gloom. But her eyes were panic and pleading all at once. Every muscle in her soaked body screamed aggression, but it was a shield born from desperation. This shepherd dog was outnumbered. 2 lives to guard, 1 storm to fight, and no strength left in her bones. I pulled my jacket wider and crouched low, making myself smaller. The rain plastered my hair against my forehead, the water running into my eyes. But none of that mattered. The furry pup that still squirmed was hungry, nosing blindly against her belly, tiny whimpers cutting through the rain. The fading little pup was colder than it should have been, every exhale barely there. I thought about how newborns can't hold their heat, how even a single draft can steal their life away. And here they were, born into a flood. My chest burned with helplessness, but I couldn't let that weakness show. She needed to see resolve, not pity. The German shepherd mama glanced down at her fragile pup, then back at me, as if testing whether I understood the weight she carried. I whispered words that barely made it through the storm. "You keep them safe, Inca. Let me keep the rain back." Her ears tilted, torn between instinct and exhaustion. The playful puppy pawed at her chest and let out a sharp high cry. It was enough to break something. She bent her head, licking him, then nudged the silent one with her nose. That pup didn't move. She whimpered, a raw, cracking sound, nothing like a growl. For a second, the storm wasn't the loudest thing here. It was her grief at the thought of losing him. That sound carving straight through me. I slid closer, one knee at a time, until I could drape more of the jacket around them. The little companion, still alive, crawled into the dry pocket, his whimpers soft but steady. The weak one stayed limp against her paw. I felt the cold sinking into my hands, and I knew if I didn't act soon, that tiny life would disappear in front of both of us. But reaching for him meant crossing the last line she was guarding with teeth and blood. Her growl rose again, chest rattling, and I froze in the rain with my heart pounding so hard it felt like the storm was inside me. Because the next move would decide if she'd let me save her baby, or if I'd lose before he even had a chance to open his eyes. Her growl tore at me like barbed wire. But beneath it, I heard something else, a mother begging the world not to take her child. The German Shepherd puppy at her belly squirmed and cried, tiny claws scraping her skin, while the weaker German Shepherd puppy barely stirred at all. I felt the weight of her stare, those wild amber eyes locked on mine, daring me to try. Rain streamed down my back, pooling in the folds of my jacket, and I held my breath like a thief caught in someone's home. Every instinct told her I was danger, but every instinct in me screamed that if I didn't get that limp little pup under cover, we'd be mourning instead of saving. I lowered my head, almost bowing, and whispered again, "Inka, I won't take them. I'll only help." My voice cracked on the word help. And maybe that's why she hesitated. Her ears twitched, her muscles quivered, and for the first time her jaw unclenched, even if only for a heartbeat. The furry pup let out a squeal, and she bent her head to nuzzle him, her attention splitting for a fraction of a second. It was the only door she would ever give me. I slid my hand beneath the jacket, not toward her, but toward the tiny abandoned puppy that lay cold against the concrete. My fingertips brushed damp fur that felt like ice, and I swore the world stopped spinning. Her teeth snapped inches from my knuckles, a flash of heat in the storm. I froze, hand trembling, waiting for her verdict. The shepherd dog's breath came in harsh bursts, nostrils flaring, lips curling, but she didn't bite. She looked at me, then down at her baby, then back again, as if weighing what mattered more, her pride or his pulse. Lightning cracked, and in that white light, I saw her decision. She let out a broken whimper and pulled back just enough for me to scoop the frail pup into the fold of my jacket. His body was no heavier than a soaked glove. His chest so faint I had to hold him to my ear to feel it. Inka pressed against my arm, teeth still bared. But it wasn't the bite of anger anymore. It was the threat of collapse. She was trusting me with something she'd rather die protecting. And it nearly undid me. The strong little companion whimpered louder, sensing his brother's absence, crawling blindly toward the space I'd stolen him from. I shifted the limp body closer to her warmth again, but shielded him under the jacket where the rain couldn't touch. Inka nosed my wrist once, hard and sudden, like a warning and a plea mixed into one. And in that strange, fragile truce, I realized we weren't enemies anymore. We were soldiers on the same battlefield, fighting the same clock, and if we lost, we'd lose him together. The limp body in my arms felt like wet cloth, too light, too cold. I pressed the German Shepherd puppy against my chest, my jacket, a poor excuse for an incubator, and prayed that my body heat could do what the storm was stealing. His brother whimpered under Inka's belly, a stronger little pup paws kneading blindly, desperate for milk. The mother curled around him, shielding him with her spine, while her eyes cut to me every second, daring me not to fail the fragile life I now held. The German Shepherd mama was trembling, teeth still showing, but it was exhaustion more than rage. Her loyalty was breaking her down, and still she wouldn't surrender. The weak pup's breaths came in faint skips, like a record losing its rhythm. I rubbed him with the corner of my sleeve, gentle circles over ribs that barely rose. He gave a cough, shallow and sharp, and I thought for a moment that was it, that he'd leave us in the rain before his eyes had ever opened. Inka whined deep and guttural, nudging my elbow as if trying to will him back to life herself. The stronger shepherd pup squeaked again, reminding us he was there too, demanding warmth, demanding his mother's milk, demanding to live. The storm had made orphans out of so many stray pups in this city, and I wasn't about to let these two join that list. I shifted, crouching lower to block the wind, my jacket now a tent over all of them. The loyal puppy in my arms gave the faintest flick of his paw, barely there, but enough for me to know he hadn't quit yet. The mother dog licked at his tiny ear through the gap in my jacket, her tongue rough but tender, and her growl eased into something closer to a moan. That sound carried more weight than thunder. It was the sound of a mother begging for one more minute, one more chance. I pressed the tiny body closer to her warmth, sharing the burden, feeling the heat of her breath mix with mine on his damp fur. For the first time, I felt like she wasn't just tolerating me. She was letting me in. The stronger pup nosed into her side, his hunger sharp and relentless. I could see his tiny belly pulling, fighting, insisting that life was worth clinging to. And then, in my arms, the frail little companion let out the faintest cry. A sound so thin I almost thought I'd imagined it. But Inca heard. She lifted her head fast, ears sharp, and answered with a soft whine that shook in her throat. That was all it took. The tiniest flicker of hope glowing in the dark of the storm. And as I held him tighter, I realized this battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The tiny cry from that fragile German Shepherd puppy lit a fuse inside me. It was soft, barely more than a breath, but it meant the spark of life was still there. Inca heard it too. Her ears shot forward and her whole body quivered as she bent down to nose the pup in my arms. She licked his damp face once, quick and frantic, then pulled back as if afraid he might shatter under her touch. The other German Shepherd puppy wriggled harder against her belly, alive and insistent, his squeals cutting through the thunder. Both newborns needed her, and she was stretched thin, a mother with nothing left to give except her own trembling body. I pressed the limp pup tighter to my chest, rubbing him with my sleeve, then slid him gently against the warmth of her side. The loyal puppy latched his mouth weakly, not even strong enough to draw milk, but still fighting. That sight cracked me open. I'd seen grown men give up with more to lose, but here was a little pup with eyes still closed, refusing to stop trying. The storm kept slamming us, but I barely felt it anymore. My whole world had shrunk to a wet patch of grass. One German Shepherd mama and two fragile sparks of life that refused to go out. Inca shifted, wrapping her legs tighter around them both. Her growl was still there, but lower, softer now, as if she was growling at death itself. The stronger Shepherd pup squealed louder, belly pressing into her fur, demanding to be fed. The frail one only whimpered once, his body still cold and stiff, but it was enough to make her whine deep and broken. She nosed him closer to her belly, but he slid back, too weak to hold on. I caught him, cupping his head in my palm, guiding him forward again. And this time, she didn't fight me. She let me place him where he needed to be, her tongue washing over my hand as though sealing a pact. Minutes stretched. The rain finally softened, falling in lighter sheets, and for the first time I felt air that wasn't razor-sharp with cold. I lifted the jacket higher, making a dome around the three of them, and breathed deep. The faintest sound came from under Inca's chest. The weak pup gave another cry, louder this time, his tiny voice breaking the silence. It wasn't strong, it wasn't steady, but it was alive. I looked at Inca, and she looked back at me, eyes wet with rain and something more. And I knew we had pulled him back from the edge. But the night was far from over, and every heartbeat still hung by a thread. The storm slowed, but the fight inside that little circle of mud hadn't ended. Inca curled tighter, her body shaking from cold and labor, but her head never left the space between her newborns. The stronger German Shepherd puppy kneaded against her belly, stubborn and loud, tiny claws scratching for warmth and milk. The weaker German Shepherd puppy clung with fragile determination, his mouth opening and closing without strength, a soundless plea that made my stomach knot. Their mother's chest rose and fell in harsh bursts, her breath steaming against my hand as I studied the limp one. She was running on instinct alone, her body drained, but her will unbroken. I slid my jacket more around them, feeling the weight of water drag at the fabric. The furry pup with fight let out a squeal that cut through the drizzle like a siren, and Inca shifted, nosing him closer, encouraging him. The frail pup twitched against my palm just enough for me to keep rubbing his side, willing heat into his cold skin. Every rescued puppy I'd ever seen needed that one break, that one flicker of strength to carry them to the next moment. But I also knew newborns could slip away in minutes. Their small bodies too fragile to battle alone. This wasn't just about getting them through the storm. This was about keeping them alive through the night. I whispered almost to myself, "Stay with her, little one. Stay." The shepherd dog lifted her head at my voice, her ears slicked back, but her eyes softer now, tired, searching. Her tongue swept over her weaker pup's head, rough strokes as if she could lick him awake. He made the smallest cry, faint but real, and it broke something in me. I thought of all the abandoned puppies I'd pulled from alleys and fields, But this felt different. This wasn't me rescuing a stray pup. This was me standing alongside a mother who refused to quit. Lightning flashed again, but distant now, as if the storm itself was retreating. Inca's tail twitched once, wrapping tighter around her babies, and for the first time she didn't growl when I adjusted the jacket closer. It was still a fragile trust, but it was there, trembling in the mud like a flame that hadn't gone out. I leaned closer, listening to the rhythm of the tiny breaths under that shield of fur and fabric. 2 lives, fragile but present. And as the rain thinned into mist, I knew we had bought them a little more time, though morning still felt a lifetime away. The rain finally thinned to a steady drizzle, but the cold dug deeper, and I knew the fight wasn't finished. Inca's sides heaved as she curled herself around both German Shepherd puppies, her body trembling, half-starved, yet still refusing to rest. The stronger German Shepherd puppy rooted into her fur, hungry and loud, fighting for his share of warmth and milk. The weaker Shepherd pup pressed against my palm, every movement so faint it felt like a secret. I rubbed him gently, tucking him closer to her belly, trying to trick his body into believing the storm hadn't stolen its fire. Even then he struggled to hold on. I thought about what I'd seen in other rescues, how young puppies could be gone in minutes if they didn't get heat and milk. This frail little pup wasn't just fighting the storm, he was fighting nature itself. The furry pup beside him squealed again, insistent and alive, his tiny voice cutting through the quiet like a stubborn declaration. He reminded me of the small dogs I'd seen in shelters who barked at the world even when no one answered. He wasn't giving up, and that stubbornness seemed to pull Inca back from the edge too. Her tongue swept over both of them in quick, frantic strokes, as if she could will strength into their fragile bodies. I lowered myself closer, jacket spread wider, making a cocoon around all 3 of them. The smell of wet fur and newborn breath mixed with the mud and rain, sharp and raw. The abandoned puppy whimpered in my palm, faint but alive, and Inca's eyes flicked to me. Less fury now, more fear. She pressed her nose to his back, and for the first time, I swear she nudged him toward my chest as though asking me to help where she couldn't. It stunned me, that moment of surrender from a shepherd dog who had fought me tooth and claw an hour earlier. It wasn't weakness, it was trust. I tucked the fragile pup deeper under the jacket, holding him against my skin, and whispered to her, "We'll keep him warm together." The stronger shepherd pup squealed again, finding her nipple at last, and I felt the shift, the tiniest balance tilting toward life instead of loss. The little companion in my arms gave a soft, shaky cry, as if echoing his brother's fight. Inca winded low in her throat, leaning into me with a weight that carried both exhaustion and hope. And in that fragile pocket of warmth under the collapsing storm, it hit me. We hadn't won yet, but for the first time all night it felt like we could. The drizzle turned into a mist, and for the first time all night I could hear more than thunder. I could hear breathing, not steady, not strong, but there were 3 rhythms under that jacket. Inca's ragged gasps, the cries of a hungry German Shepherd puppy, and the shallow, fragile breaths of his brother pressed against my chest. That weak German Shepherd puppy was still icy cold, his paws limp, but every so often, his ribs twitched against my palm like he was remembering how to live. The stronger pup was louder now, his squeals rising in pitch, and against all odds, he latched on and began to nurse. The sound of suckling was so faint it could have been lost in the rain. But to me it was thunder, proof that one life was claiming its place. Inca bent low, licking the weaker pup's head again, her nose bumping my wrist, urging me to try harder. Her eyes burned with something deeper than fear. It was the raw plea of a mother who couldn't fight alone anymore. The shepherd dog had spent every drop of strength holding the world back, and now she was asking me to step in. I shifted, cupping the limp pup higher against my chest, rubbing small circles the way I'd once seen a vet do when a newborn canine came in barely breathing. He gave a cough, sharp and sudden, and my whole body froze, waiting to see if it meant the end or the beginning. Another twitch of his paw, then the faintest whine, thin and ray, but real. The kind of sound you'd miss if you weren't listening with your soul. The furry pup, nursing at her belly, squealed louder as though cheering him on. Inca answered with a low whimper, curling closer until our arms and her legs formed a circle of heat around both babies. The weak pup's breathing steadied just enough to match the rhythm of her chest, uneven, but stronger than before. My shoulders ached from crouching. My clothes clung like ice, but none of it mattered because inside that fragile pocket, life was fighting back. The storm had taken so much from this city, from stray pups and homeless dogs, but tonight it wasn't going to take them. Not while Inca fought with her teeth, and I fought with my hands. The loyal puppy against her belly, and the orphaned puppy against my heart, had survived the first round. But dawn was still hours away, and I knew the night would test us again before it gave us light. The hours crawled like years, every breath a question mark. The stronger German Shepherd puppy had claimed his lifeline, nursing with stubborn hunger, each squeal sharper than the last. But the weaker German Shepherd puppy was still a shadow in my arms, trembling against my chest, his tiny ribs rising and falling in desperate stutters. I rubbed him constantly, the fabric of my sleeve rough against his fragile body, whispering words I wasn't sure I believed. "Stay, little pup. Stay." Inca's tongue swept over him again and again, a rhythm as frantic as my heartbeat, as though her love alone could summon warmth back into his bones. I'd seen brave pups give up before, but something about this one, something about the way his paw twitched every time she touched him, kept me from letting go. The drizzle turned to silence, the storm retreating at last. The street lamps flickered, revealing the ruin around us. Flooded gutters, scattered trash, and 3 souls fighting in the mud for a future. The abandoned puppy gave another faint cry. And this time it wasn't thin and fading. It was sharper, cutting through the night like a fragile thread pulled tight. Inca froze, ears forward, then whined deep in her chest. A mother's answer. I shifted him closer to her warmth, guiding his mouth toward her, and held my breath. For a moment he only pressed weakly against her fur. Then, impossibly, his tiny lips latched, and the world went still. My throat closed. I felt the faint pull of a suckle, clumsy but real. The loyal puppy beside him squealed as if cheering his brother on, and Inca bent her head down, nuzzling both as her body trembled with exhaustion and relief. I had no words, only the sting of tears mixing with rain on my face, because I knew this moment was a miracle. The growing puppy at her belly wriggled with energy, strong and loud, while his brother finally found his strength, the smallest proof that he wanted to stay. A rescued puppy who'd been closer to death than life was choosing in that instant to fight. The night wasn't over, and dawn hadn't come yet, but inside that fragile circle of fur and fabric, everything shifted. The storm had broken. The fight for survival had turned, and as I watched the little companion draw his first real mouthful of milk, I understood this was the kind of moment that could carry all of us into the morning. By the time the sky began to pale, the storm had left nothing but silence and the smell of wet earth. Inca was curled into a half-moon, her body draped protectively around both German Shepherd puppies. The stronger pup's belly was full, his cries softer now, replaced with small sighs of contentment. The weaker German Shepherd puppy was still pressed against her, no longer limp, but trembling with fragile determination, his breath steadier than hours before. I kept one hand near him, feeling the faint rhythm of his ribs, terrified to let go but grateful each time I felt him move. The first light of dawn slipped through the mist and lit up their fur, black and tan patches shining like wet paint against the green grass. The sight pulled at me harder than the storm ever had. The abandoned puppies weren't just alive. They were still together, clinging to their mother, and she was clinging to them. Her eyes found mine, no longer burning with fury but heavy with exhaustion, something softer flickering behind them. She didn't growl this time. Instead, she let her head rest across both pups as though telling me, "We made it through the night." My jacket was soaked, my knees numb from crouching, but I didn't move. I'd promised them warmth, and I wouldn't take it away now. The furry pup nuzzled deeper into her chest, and the frail little companion gave a small squeak. So weak, yet so alive, it made my chest ache. That sound was proof that every fight, every drop of rain endured, had meant something. I whispered his name in my head, though he didn't have one yet, because something this brave deserved to be called. The city was waking up beyond the alley. The rumble of a bus, the scrape of shutters lifting, the day beginning again. But in that corner of New Orleans, time stayed still, holding on to a miracle born in mud and rain. And as I watched those two shepherd pups curl closer into their mother's side, I knew the storm had taken its best shot and failed. They had survived the night, but their journey wasn't finished yet, because survival was only the first step toward life. Morning rose clear and quiet, the grass still glittering with rain, but the air finally warm. Inca lifted her head, ears tilting at the sounds of the city stirring awake, and for the first time I saw peace in her eyes. Both German shepherd puppies were alive, one strong and noisy, one fragile but stubborn, each pressed close to her side as if the storm had never happened. The stronger pup yawned wide, tiny pink tongue flashing, while the weaker pup gave a small squeak, his chest rising steady now, no longer a ghost of breath. They had made it through the longest night of their lives. I sat back, aching from hours in the mud, but my heart lighter than it had been in years. This German shepherd mama had fought harder than any soldier I'd ever known, and her newborns had followed her lead. Two tiny lives that should have been lost in the storm now had a chance at growing up, at running in the grass, at finding love instead of loneliness. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a reminder of what it means to never give up, even when the odds scream otherwise. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. Every time you share a story like this, you give another abandoned puppy the chance to be seen, to be saved, to find a future. So I ask you from the bottom of my heart, if this story touched you, please like, comment, and share. Because your support doesn't just spread hope, it saves lives. Join our Brave Paws family. Be their voice, be their hope,